Hi there, welcome to my channel. My name is Tana and I am a busy working mom to two little ones. And in today's video, I'm going to be sharing just a little bit more about what happened during my first pregnancy with my older son, who had a very high risk pregnancy and quite an interesting welcome to the world. In my last video, I talked about getting diagnosed with a molar pregnancy and what that experience was like. So if you haven't seen that video, you may want to click the link below or above and check out that video, since it basically tells you the beginning part of this story that I'm going to tell today. So after I got through the molar pregnancy diagnosis and decided to get a second opinion, 12-ish week, my blood levels looked good, I had genetic testing done, everything looked great, and I felt like I was out of the woods. And that was the case until around 20 weeks. So around 16 weeks, I had an anatomy scan and everything looked relatively good, but the position that the baby was in was a little bit difficult for them to see everything. And I remember actually the tech being like, why are you here at 16 weeks? You're not supposed to come till 20 weeks. And I explained to her, I think my doctor was just wanting me to have an extra scan because I had all this other stuff that was going on in the beginning. And she was like, okay, whatever, we'll take as many pictures as we can, but you're gonna have to come back in 20 weeks. 20 weeks I went in and I had another scan. And at this particular scan, I got that same vibe from the sonogram tech that I had gotten in my very first scan with the pregnancy, where the tech, basically said she didn't see what she was supposed to be seeing and she needed the doctor to come talk to me. And that's when they told me, hey, we think you're having this molar pregnancy. So this was a different office, different sonogram tech. I'm laying there, they've got the goop all over my stomach and they're taking the pictures, and I could kind of tell something was wrong because she wasn't too chatty and she was like I felt like she was taking a lot of extra pictures and kind of focusing on one area. And she told me she was gonna have to go get the doctor to come back in. And at my 16-week scan, the doctor did not come in. They just took the pictures and they sent them to my OB and he looked at them. No one came in to talk to me after the tech was there. The doctor came in, my husband was with me at this visit, and he tells me that basically they see that I have Vasa Previa. And I'm like, what the heck is Vasa Previa? I had heard of placenta previa before, but I had never heard of Vasa Previa. I had no idea what it was. He drew a picture and basically explained that where the baby's blood supply was in the wrong place and in a dangerous place, because essentially his blood supply was crossing over my cervix. If that particular blood supply ruptured, my baby would be at risk of basically bleeding out, because they have such little blood as a fetus, and as a baby it's a matter of minutes that they would have to make sure they could stop any bleeding. Once again, I was sort of overwhelmed with this information, not knowing what this was or having much experience with it. I remember crying on the way home and Googling it, of course, Dr. Google. I had to check and see what Dr. Google said, and I was just becoming really overwhelmed. I was reading that this was super rare, that it happened in 1 in every 2,500 pregnancies, give or take, and that it was gonna mean I was high risk. And the doctor had told me before I left, do not have intercourse, do not have sex, you are on pelvic rest, you can't work out, you can't do anything basically. You can just go to work and sleep a lot and that's it. Because if you do anything, you could be at risk. And I ended up Googling a lot, like I said, and finding the Vasa Previa Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization. And if you happen to be diagnosed with Vasa Previa, you're definitely going to want to look into this organization, because they were extremely helpful as far as education and knowledge and how to be an advocate for yourself. And I remember I emailed them and someone emailed me back, explaining more about it and what to do and kind of what I needed to look out for with my care plan. And I also found a Vasa Previa awareness group on Facebook, which was very helpful, because until I found that group, I kind of felt like I was going through this alone. No one really understood. Every time I would talk about having Vasa Previa, or I would tell a family member what I was going through, they'd be like, oh yeah, placenta previa, my friend had that, she had to have a C-section. Okay, Vasa Previa is not the same as placenta previa. That was my number one pet peeve when I was pregnant. Everyone comparing Vasa Previa to placenta previa, because they are not the same. I just felt so alone until I found this Facebook group, and that Facebook group was very helpful. I had another scan at 25 weeks, and at 25 weeks, the same doctor looked at the scans. The doctor came in and was like, we don't think that you have placenta previa anymore, and we actually think that the Vasa Previa is resolving as well. And I was skeptical because everything that I was reading and everything that I had learned through the International Vasa Previa Foundation basically said that Vasa Previa could be very, very dangerous for the baby. And in fact, if undiagnosed, the baby would likely die. Like, it's a fatal condition if you can't manage it. If it's found and it's managed, 97% of people have no issue. They end up having a healthy birth and a healthy baby. So it's just one of those things where, like, I was extremely lucky that this was found. And then now they were telling me, oh, we think it moved. We think you don't have it anymore. And I decided to get a second opinion. Surprise, surprise. If you watched my first video on the molar pregnancy, then you probably can understand why I decided to get a second opinion. I just said, I don't trust this. Like, I need a second opinion. I need to validate this. They were wrong with the molar pregnancy. They could be wrong again. So we went and saw a maternal fetal medicine specialist in a different office, and he confirmed that he in fact still saw Vasa Previa, and he was very concerned, and he knew my doctor, my OB, and they talked on the phone, and they made a care plan. And basically from then on out, from 25 weeks on, I went for a scan like every other week, and then towards the end I was going every single week. So I had so many sonograms with my first baby. I knew he was a boy, and they were basically just trying to watch it and measure it and see how close those vessels were. And they kept saying, like, if you have any bleeding at all, any spotting, anything, you need to go to the emergency room immediately. You need to call an ambulance, because even you driving yourself to the emergency room, you probably wouldn't make it in time. And I live pretty close to a hospital. I live about 5 minutes from a hospital, but it was not the hospital I was planning to give birth at. My doctor didn't have privileges at that hospital. Just kept thinking, I hope that I don't start bleeding, I hope I don't go into labor, because obviously I wanted to make sure that I was able to use my doctor for my birth. I felt like a ticking time bomb. Like, everywhere I went to work, I went to Home Depot with my husband. We were going through like a house renovation project. At that time, I wasn't able to really help with anything because I was pregnant and I had this high risk condition. So basically, yeah, I was just trying to get through each day without feeling like I was having total anxiety. So for the most part, like, I was really lucky, because a lot of the women that I spoke with who were going through this at the same time as me, you know, they were having spotting and they were going to the hospital a lot to get checked. It was just a scary time, to be honest. It was not the easiest thing to go through, and it lasted for so long. 20 weeks of pregnancy, I find this out. 25 weeks, it's confirmed. And then I ended up having him at 36 weeks. So that's 16 weeks that I was, you know, dealing with this and trying to deal with the emotion and the unknown of, like, not knowing how things were gonna work out. And I'm an already anxious person, so it was just hard for me, to be honest with you. If you're going through this right now, I'm really sorry that you're having to go through this, but I would definitely say find other people that are going through it. Leave me a comment below. I'm happy to talk with you through Instagram DM or however, you know, is best to communicate with you if you are going through this, because you shouldn't have to go through it alone. It's not the easiest thing, and having someone that's been through it before who could give you advice would probably be helpful for you, because it was helpful for me. So around 30 weeks, I had a scan, and things were looking pretty much the same, but they weren't, you know, getting worse. Like, the measurements weren't getting smaller. The goal was really to find out, like, how long could I make it at home before I was going to need to go to the hospital. And this is really common and really normal when you have Vasa Previa. They do make you go on bed rest, and it's hospital bed rest at the end of your pregnancy, because they just don't want to take any risk or any chances. And if you do happen to go into labor, they pretty much need to get you to the OR in a matter of minutes and get the baby out. My doctor and my maternal fetal medicine specialist and my husband and I, like, we all discussed it, and I had a scan and they confirmed, yeah, you need to go to the hospital tomorrow. So I woke up, it was a Friday morning, it was June 1st, packed my bags the night before. I remember feeling really scared and nervous that I was gonna be going to the hospital alone, and, you know, basically just being in the hospital for close to a month without my dog, without my husband. It was just a very weird concept. It wasn't how I imagined packing my hospital bag. You know, I had watched a million what's in my hospital bag videos, and never in a million years did I think I was gonna be packing up my hospital bag and, you know, heading to the hospital for a month. So I got to the hospital that morning around maybe 10 or 11 with my husband. Got, you know, admitted, and things were not moving very quickly because I wasn't in labor. So I was on the labor and delivery floor, and I was definitely like least priority because of the fact that I wasn't actually in labor. And they stuck me in a triage room and then moved us to a labor and delivery room, and the nurse came in and like took all my vitals, and they did a non-stress test, and they gave me an IV and all that stuff. And I remember the IV was like the worst part because I have the worst veins, and I was like, why do I need an IV? And they told me, you're gonna need an IV the entire time you're here. And I was like, what? I need an IV for an entire month? This is gonna be a nightmare. Yeah, it was a nightmare. I have some pictures that you could see that my arms were just like black and blue by the time I left this hospital. But yeah, we sat in the room for, I think we sat in the room for 3 hours waiting for my doctor to come see me, because it was a Friday and he had had a couple of planned C-sections that day. So he was at the hospital, but you know, in surgery. And when he finally came and saw me, he basically said, okay, we're gonna bring you up to the postpartum floor. There's no antepartum floor in my hospital, and there generally aren't in most hospitals because most people aren't in the hospital when they're antepartum, which is, you know, before you have the baby. So I was on the postpartum floor, which was really strange because I was hearing babies cry and I was seeing babies be wheeled around in the clear, you know, bassinets, and I had baby nurses basically taking care of me because most of the nurses on this floor were not labor and delivery nurses, they were postpartum nurses, or they call it mother and baby care at my hospital. So when I got to the hospital, I also got a betamethasone shot, which is an injection shot that I got in my butt, and it's basically a steroid, and it's very advantageous in maturing the lungs, or kind of like speeding up lung development in a baby. So I got that when I got to the hospital, and then I believe it was 24 hours later I got a second dose of it, and the goal was just to make sure that I got at least 2 doses before I reached labor. So they wanted to get it in me right away just in case like something happened while I was there. I basically had to sit in the hospital room for a month, which was honestly, like, it wasn't physically challenging. It wasn't. I mean, I basically sat there and I ate hospital food, which at my hospital was not the worst thing in the world, although I gained a lot of weight sitting there because you're just sitting there eating and you're not doing anything else. I wasn't even allowed to go outside. I was allowed to walk one corridor that was near my room, but I wasn't allowed to go any farther. I had to tell someone when I was gonna walk around. By like week 2, I felt like I was going crazy and I hadn't had any fresh air. I had a nice, beautiful window in my room, and I had a private room. I was really lucky that I had a private room, but I was basically looking outside and it was June, it was gorgeous outside, and I'm stuck in this hospital, like not able to go outside. So I finally convinced my doctor to ask them to take me outside. I was like, this is not good for my mental health. Like, I need to get fresh air. And I was allowed to go out for 15 minutes, but I had to go out in a wheelchair, which was also extremely weird to have someone be taking time out of their shift to wheel me out in the wheelchair and then just chit chat with me basically, because we're awkwardly sitting there outside. So it was just very strange to be in the hospital for that long. I mean, I was lucky because I was able to have people visit me, and my dog even came to visit me once. I had someone come give me a pedicure one time, which was kind of a nice treat. She had this mobile pedicure station and she came and gave me a pedicure. So I did my best to stay positive. I played a lot of games when people came to visit me. But it was hard, it was emotionally hard. It wasn't physically hard, but it was emotionally hard to sit there. And I just had so many days where I cried, and I cried for a long time because I just felt like, why is this happening to me? Why am I here? I had so much anxiety. I had so much stress about the fact that, was I gonna wake up and be in labor and get rushed to the OR? I just had no idea what was gonna happen. And I had some nurses that I felt really knew what Vasa Previa was. And I had other nurses that would come in and I felt like they had no clue. And I would have to educate them on what it was, because it is so rare that they had just never taken care of a patient that had had this before. So it was strange. My routine in the hospital was pretty much, I would wake up every morning, I would eat breakfast. I was working remotely from the hospital. I was doing a lot of project-based work for my office virtually. So I was glad that I at least had that to sort of keep me busy during the workday. At night, people would come visit me, and in the morning and night every day I had to have a non-stress test. So I would sit there with the machine strapped to me and they would measure the baby for a certain amount of time, and the nurses would leave and they could see it on the monitor at the nurses station. And every once in a while the house doctor would come in and check the scans and talk to me and things like that. But overall, like, it was really weird. It was really strange. My doctor would come visit me every morning and he would talk to me about how things were going and kind of what the plan was, and he would look at my non-stress tests every night and my scans, and we decided that I was going to try to make it to 35 weeks before having a C-section. And so we scheduled the C-section for June 15th, and then when it was like June 13th or 14th, my scans were still looking really, really good, and I was feeling really good. And my doctor basically, you know, he had me go tour the NICU and talk to the neonatal doctor there, who was absolutely amazing, and the nurses were amazing in the NICU too. I took a tour and sat down and talked with them, and like really was mentally prepared in case something happened and my baby did need to go to the NICU pretty quickly. But I also, you know, after all these conversations with my doctor, realized the benefit of my baby staying inside of me. As anxious as I was to get home and have my baby and go home, I also wanted to make sure I was actually bringing my baby home and that my baby wasn't going to be in the NICU and I was going home without him. So I made the decision to wait as long as possible, and we decided to push my C-section out 5 additional days, and I ended up, you know, getting scheduled for June 20th. I decided to push the C-section out because I wanted to just get the best chance that you wouldn't have to go to the NICU. So when you have these Vasa Previa, really the only option is a C-section, which in and of itself was kind of devastating that I knew I was gonna have to have a C-section, because I had been wanting to have as natural a pregnancy as possible. And honestly, I was kind of like really afraid of birth. It had always been like a fear of mine, but I had watched so many birth vlogs and watched so many people give birth that I was, you know, kind of fascinated with it, and I had this like idea that I was gonna conquer my fear. And then to find out that I had to have a C-section, I was like, wait, what? That's not the plan. So even just wrapping my head around that, I think it was the fact that I just didn't have a choice. It was, I had no control, and this was how it was gonna be. I just had to go with the only option that I really had. It kind of took something away, I don't know. In a way, it sort of made me really sad, and I had a hard time not having control of the situation. I'm gonna end the video here, and I will definitely continue to tell you what happened. So I'll talk about that in my next video, and you can hear a little bit more. And if you are going through this, I am so sorry that you are. Feel free to leave a comment below. Really appreciate this positive community that we all are creating here on YouTube, and I will see you in my next one. Thank you so much for watching.